When I was a junior in high school, I had to take an emergency trip to the bathroom. My stomach was really upset. I definitely had some sort of stomach bug going on. As I was dashing through the hallway trying to make it to the bathroom in time, I started to hear a whistling sound that was coming from the other side of the hallway. As I got closer to the bathroom, I realized that whoever was whistling was in the bathroom. I didn't think much of it, other than that it was a slight inconvenience for me, as I was wanting the bathroom all to myself, considering I was literally going to blow the toilet up. I ran to the stall and did my business uncomfortably. The entire time, that man that I barely even saw, might I add, stayed in the bathroom. I must have been in there for like 10 minutes at this point, and there is no telling how long he would have been in there beforehand. I started to think that it was probably the school janitor, but I really wanted him to leave for obvious reasons. I wanted some privacy. The whole time he was whistling and humming while IWA's mitts going number 2. Gross, I know, but this is what happened. After I finished up in the stall, I walked out to wash my hands real quickly, all while trying not to make eye contact with the man that was in the bathroom with me, as I was kind of embarrassed. I also had to hurry back to class because if I were to be gone for too long, it's very well possible I could have gotten into some trouble. Then what happened next threw me off guard completely. The janitor then started walking over towards my direction, and he stopped after being no more than a foot away from me. He was so close that I could feel him breathing on me. I felt a tingle on the back of my neck, and I was so uncomfortable that I had no other option other than to look at him. "What the heck, man?" I said. He had this stone-cold look on his face, and then shortly after he gave me this extremely disturbing-looking smile that I will never forget. I made my way back to class, and I was puzzled. All I could think was that that guy was crazy. I texted my friend about it when I got back to class, and he told me how he had a similar situation with that guy, the same exact janitor. He told me he knew he was a creep too, so we planned on talking to the principal about him that day, but we never ended up following through with that. After school, me and that same friend I was just talking about, Elias, and another one of our close friends, Peyton, all decided to walk after school. That was something that we did a lot. Usually we would go to nearby restaurants or fast food chains or even the park. We did all kinds of stuff after school, and usually it was the most fun we would ever have. This day we decided we were going to go to this diner that we all loved. We had to walk through this trail that started on school grounds and opened back up at a nearby neighborhood in order to get to this restaurant. Well, we didn't have to take that way, but it was definitely quicker and a way more fun route. So 90% of the days we walked after school, we would take the trails. Elias and I started talking about that creepy janitor, and Peyton started to chime in as well. He knew the janitor that we were talking about, but he never had any experience with him. We were telling Peyton just how creepy that guy was, and he started to understand. I kid you not, though, it was like us talking about him. The janitor spawned him there or something, not literally, but it was like crazily ironic and weird. Up in the distance, we noticed that there was a man ahead. "No way," Peyton said. "Dude, isn't that him, the janitor from school?" We all stood in fear and confusingly looked at him until we could all make out that it was him for 100% certainty. "Hey, let's turn around," Peyton said. I didn't even say anything to that. I just continued moving forward, as did Elias. As we were walking past him, he then stopped and stared at us, but we kept walking. The janitor then yelled for us and asked if we would like to hang out. Okay, so not only was this man a janitor at our school and supposed to be an authority figure, but he was really a creep. He also had to have been at least 55 years old. Why the heck would he want to hang out with a bunch of kids our age for? We just ignored him and we picked up our pace a little bit. But he then started jogging towards us, and it was at this point that we started to full-on run. He then began screaming at us, and when I looked back, I saw that he had a knife in one of his hands. We all screamed for help and ran for at least 5 minutes, and shortly after that, we seemed to have lost him. We later found out about who he really was the next day of school. Me, Elias, and Peyton and our parents all went up to the school, had no idea who this man was, and that he wasn't a school janitor. He was a man pretending to be a janitor. I don't know how he got away with this, like getting inside the school and all without being detected for so long. It's quite ridiculous and scary, if you ask me. They really need to double down on security because school is supposed to be a safe place for kids to learn. It turned out that the man was a convicted sex offender as well, and that he has been abusing minors for years now. He also had a court order where he had to stay a certain distance away from kids, but that didn't stop him. I personally think he was going to take it a step further this time and try to kill one of us. Some people are so messed up in the head I can't even begin to comprehend. Do you feel that tingling? That's the fear running through your veins. If you love the thrill and don't want to miss any of our scary stories, hit the subscribe button. It was my freshman year, and I'll never forget the sound of the lockdown bell blaring over the intercom. It was the middle of 4th period, and I had asked to be excused so that I could use the restroom. And after writing me a bathroom pass, I went to relieve myself. The bathroom wasn't far from my class, and because it was in the middle of a period, there wasn't anyone in there, which was nice because usually there's a small line. And halfway through doing what I went in there to do, the sound of an alarm began to sound. I recognized it right away as the notice that the building was on lockdown, and just as I began to wash my hands with the intent to walk back to my classroom before they locked the door, I heard the principal over the loudspeaker. "There's an unknown intruder in the building," he said. "This is not a drill. Please lock your classroom doors and remain where you are until police can arrive and assess the situation." My eyes widened as I realized how serious the situation actually was. I quickly made my way over to the bathroom door, hoping that I could lock it. However, it didn't latch properly, so all I could do was close the door. As soon as I did that, I ran into one of the bathroom stalls and closed the door. I sat on the toilet and pressed my feet up against the door of the stall. That way no one could force it open if they tried to get in. Thankfully, my mom had warned me about this possibility, and I was prepared, because as luck would have it, my heart sank to my stomach as I heard the sound of the bathroom door opening. At first, I hoped it was a teacher or something, looking for stray students. But when they didn't call out to see if anyone was in the bathroom, I realized that it was the intruder. They slowly made their way into the bathroom, and as they got closer to the stall, I could see that they were wearing old-looking running shoes and sweatpants on. For a second, I thought this might be a good sign, and I hoped that it had been another student looking to hide in the stall with me. But again, I was mistaken. I realized this when the person began walking by my stall and stopped right in front of it. I held my breath as they turned to face the door. I could feel them press up against it as if they were trying to open it. But thanks to my legs being there, it wouldn't budge. That was when they took another step closer and pressed their face to the stall to look through the crack. I was frozen with fear as I made eye contact with them. After a second of staring at me, the man backed up away from the stall. I was hoping that they were giving up and leaving the bathroom, but for some reason, they wanted to get to me. After taking a few steps away from the stall, the man turned and ran as fast as he could, practically throwing himself at the stall door, trying to get it to burst open. The first time he tried, the door didn't budge, but as he continued to charge at the stall, I could feel the hinges and the lock getting weaker and weaker, and surely my legs wouldn't have been able to hold him back, not while he was throwing his whole weight at the door. I was beginning to get more and more concerned that he was about to get in, but thankfully I was saved by our school security cop. He must have heard the man trying to break down the door, and without any sort of backup, he came in to help. The security guard ran into the bathroom and tackled the intruder before telling me to wait in the stall. He wanted to make sure I was safe until the police could get there and arrest the man. According to the news reports, he was under the influence of some sort of substance when he snuck into the school. Other than that, we got no clear reason as to why he tried to attack a student. I tell you though, it's something I'll never forget. Junior year of high school was probably the worst year of my life. Of course, there were your typical reasons, as I'm sure that high school isn't a walk in the park for anyone, but that year particularly was one that has left me scarred for the rest of my life. I'll never forget the first day of classes. I walked into my chemistry class and the teacher immediately stopped me and introduced himself as Mr. Conroy. I noticed that he hadn't done that for anyone else that walked in with me, but I figured that he was just being a polite teacher, so of course I introduced myself as Paula. He told me that it was a pleasure to have me in his class and to have a seat. Now, for the rest of that class, he didn't call on me, but I couldn't help but notice him staring at me almost the entire time. I mean, it was to the point where after class, my friend Ryan, who was also in the class, brought it up to me. I tried to pretend that it was just a weird first day, but it didn't stop with that class. For the rest of the first month, Mr. Conroy kept doing things that were making me feel odd. He would either stare relentlessly at me, or sometimes I would notice him walking around the class as he was teaching. But every time he would get to my area of the classroom, he would just stop and stand right behind my seat. It was really weird. But again, I didn't realize what was happening. So I didn't do anything about it yet. That is, until he started to cross the line. That year, I was one of the starting players on our girls' volleyball team. We had a game one night to which Mr. Conroy showed up, and that might not have been strange if he had just shown up to the game. But afterward, when I was leaving the locker room, he was waiting in the hallway. As soon as I noticed him, I froze up because I knew he was there for me. I stopped in the middle of the hallway, hoping that I could turn around and go back into the locker room without him noticing me. But before I could turn around, I saw him look my way. Mr. Conroy stood up from leaning against the wall and began walking toward me with a really weird smile across his face. It looked like he was getting ready to say something when, thankfully, I saw my dad walking around the corner. I quickly waved and called out to my dad, which caused my teacher to look back over his shoulder. When he noticed my dad, I swear the smile fell right off of his face. I ran over to my parents and greeted them as if nothing was wrong. But as soon as we were out of earshot, I expressed how weird my teacher was being. My mom and dad talked about it and decided to get the principal involved, and we all figured that it would be best for me to transfer to a different chemistry class. And that next day was probably the best chemistry class that I'd had all semester. I could actually pay attention because I felt comfortable enough to relax. It wasn't like my teacher was trying to make advances toward me anymore. However, That day turned from good to terrible 2 periods later when I ran into Mr. Conroy in the hallway. He tried to call me over, but I ignored him and continued walking to gym class. That was when he began to follow me. As soon as I noticed, I began walking as fast as I could, and when I crossed the threshold into the girls' locker room, I felt safe, thinking that he couldn't follow me. Sadly, I was wrong. As I began to make my way through the locker room, I heard the sound of other girls gasping and reacting to something, so I turned and I was surprised to see Mr. Conroy walking through the locker room right over to me. Before he even got close, we all could hear him telling me not to worry and saying that he just wanted to talk. I told him that he needed to leave right away, and all he kept asking was for me to please talk with him after school that day. Thankfully, Miss Martins walked in and immediately began yelling at Mr. Conroy. It wasn't long before the police showed up at the school and my old chemistry teacher was arrested. He ended up being fired from the school, and 3 other students plus myself all filed restraining orders against him. But other than that, he didn't receive any charges or face any time, as much as we all wished he had been put away. If you want to see more horror stories, watch my next video.